is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the Alto again, and this time we are here with Cameron of Love is Noise. Thank you for coming on the show today. It's an honor to have you here.
That's all good, man. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. As I told you before we started rolling, your debut album. I mean, I can't think of a better debut to start off with, but To Live in a Different Way. So far, my personal favorite album to come out in the year of 2025. Definitely the album that every other band has to beat for me. Was there sort of a vision that you had going into the making of this, being that all we got previously was just an EP, or was this just a very throwing paint at the wall and seeing sort of what sticks songwriting process?
Yeah, so there was a direct vision, and it was to create something that no one else was really doing at the time. So, for example, you could place us in, I guess, the alternative metal space, the Deftones world, that kind of, the rise of bands that are inspired by Deftones. And there's a lot of bands that I guess you could say do a similar sound. And what we wanted to do, being Love is Noise, is create something that is, as I said, the complete opposite of what people were expecting. We wanted to do it because we were just in the mood of, we were getting a bit bored of our sound, and we wanted to really delve into the influences that we had. So shoegaze was one of those, and we really wanted to have an album that our idols would look at and be like, okay, this could fit in the world that they were in. So you've got the likes of Slow Dive, you've got the likes of My Bloody Valentine, and then, in the shoegaze world, and we wanted to we did want to replicate what they'd done, but we wanted to do it in a way that made sense for our goals, which was to push our music forward and reach new spaces. So yeah, we did have a vision. The vision was to create a shoegaze inspired alternative metal record that wasn't incredibly polished and had issues in the actual recording, so that it felt real to us. We were very, very much influenced by real sounding records, because in today's musical space, there's a lot of non-real kind of recordings and stuff that you could almost feel was just meticulously edited and things like that. So
Yeah.
nothing against that type of sound, and we may go back to that, but we just wanted to try something new, because you only get your debut album once, and we wanted to make a stand and have an opinion of like, yeah, this is bold, and that's what we wanted to do.
It's definitely bold. You could almost call it like a smorgasbord of shoegaze, or almost kind of like a schmorgaze board. Cue in the virtual booze with that pun. But it definitely is. I mean, with all the bands you referenced it, and I mean, it definitely is a record for the time, because I definitely see fans of Loathe or Fleshwater, Slow Dive, even with a lot of like bands that are more alternative, like Narrowhead or Teenage Wrist, that really tends to bring back that sort of shoegaze element. I wanted to ask you this too, because I've noticed that this shoegaze genre is very popular with a lot of like the hardcore crowd, like people who listen to Knocked Loose, or people who listen to bands like Harm's Way or Employed to Serve, or any bands that are very, very aggressively, brutally heavy. And, even the Fleshwater connection, having members that come from Vane to translate into that music as well. I'm wondering, what is the sort of crossover in that? I like that it's very diverse, and that, everybody in that scene has a very eclectic taste. But I'm wondering, like, where that sort of, because, like, I don't expect anybody at a Knocked Loose show to listen to Blackstone Cherry anytime soon, for the most part.
Yeah.
But so I'm wondering where this sort of like love for alternative gaze comes in with the more hardcore crowd.
I think that people who listen to hardcore, especially, I guess, newer fans of hardcore, say from the last 10 to 15 years or so, or 20 years, I think they have quite an eclectic taste. So they don't just listen to hardcore. Like, they listen to shoegaze, they listen to alternative music, they listen to dance music, they listen to like Aphex Twin and things like that from, well, my friends and stuff like that. So I think I can't really explain it, but shoegaze just has an element of hardcore in there, just because of the feeling of the guitars and the feeling of the music. There's a lot of crossover there. I genuinely can't explain why, because it's just a feeling. And with festivals, like Outbreak in the UK, they have a load of Slow Diver headlining one of the days this summer that I'm going to, but then Not Loose headlining as well. So the crossover is there. I just don't can't really explain why. It may be because I'm guessing here that a lot of these shoegaze bands maybe came from hardcore spaces, or I guess like Narrowhead and Teenage Wrist, who else, like Fleshwater, all these bands that you mentioned. I think they came from hardcore spaces, so maybe I don't think it's like they got bored of hardcore, but maybe they found a new sound, and then they wanted to bring that into their world. So that's probably the space. Another band called Wishy as well. I listened to a podcast called Hard Law, and I think on their award show they said, I think it was hardcore motherfuckers who don't play hardcore was one of their was one of their awards, and that kind of sums it up.
Yeah.
And I've been into hardcore for a long time. I wouldn't say I'm in the scene, but I've listened to guess more of the metalcore side of, I guess, the metallic hardcore side of hardcore. Yeah. So Harm's Way would be in there. Sanction. Who else would be? Well, Vane were in there. Code Orange. And Painted Truth is another one. I'm not Gridiron as well, things like that. But I'm not really completely in there. I wouldn't call myself a hardcore lover, but I've been around it, and I guess you could put Lover's Noise in that space. Definitely, we're definitely more of the kind of Loathe connection. So we're not as heavily in the hardcore world as such, but I am influenced by it all, and I admire the hardcore space. I guess you could say we fit into, but you wouldn't even say Death Heaven, kind of how they're.
Yeah, but Death Heaven not so much, I will say, because Death Heaven I associate a lot with black metal, so I put them along with like a lot of the black gaze bands, with bands like Astronoid or Mole, or that kind of perspective. I could definitely see a tour with Death Heaven, and I would love to see that show. That would be a great show.
Be cool. I wouldn't say we're like exactly in that world, but how Death Heaven just do whatever they want to do.
Yeah,
I guess you could say we have similar influences and the similar mind. I would love to speak to them at some point and understand their kind of songwriting process, because it's cool how they just drop Infinite Granite. They go from being a complete black metal, black gaze band, and then do a whole album where it's not that. And I love all that type of stuff. But I know I've gone on a tangent there, but I think it's mainly the vibe that shoegaze brings. I think hardcore musicians and people in that world, they enjoy that, and it just melts into one. I guess you could say Title Fight, even though I guess you could say they were a punk band, but they were in that hardcore world at the same time.
Yeah, well, I mean, the best examples also, like when you look at history repeating itself too, like when you look at a lot of the biggest emo bands like My Chemical Romance, I mean, they were opening for Every Time I Die and Misery Signals back in the day. Yeah. So like a lot of the emo bands, AFI or Taking Back Sunday, very much in line with the Long Island hardcore movement, playing with Quicksand and Glassjaw and along those lines. So there's always like a softer side that sort of breeds out of like hardcore. Another good example, New York City hardcore. I mean, that scene gave birth to Typo Negative, which wrote some of the greatest love ballads in metal. So there is sort of like always like a sensitive side that's sort of breeded with every hardcore scene.
Could you say that all the cool, like as in the bands that push genres, they start from hardcore? I don't know.
Yeah, Turnstile is one of the biggest bands in the world right now, and look where they came from.
And so I remember seeing Turnstile at Ghost Fest in the UK in Leeds, like probably about 10 years ago, and I think that was one of the sets that changed everything for me. I think Malevolence as well, and Desolated was another one as well. So it's funny how like we've created this to live a different way. It's quite soft, but has its heavy moments, but it still is in that hardcore world. Like a lot of people in the UK wouldn't say myself, I'm in the hardcore space, but I've listened to hardcore for a very long time and all the adjacent genres around it. Not as so full blown hardcore, but all the metallic side of it, and I've been a huge fan of it all. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would like Love Is Noise to be in that world of like Fleshwater and Narrowhead and be able to support hardcore bands or even support Not Loose. I would love to do that. They definitely don't know who Love Is Noise are or who I am,
Yet.
but
Yet.
I'm not trying to push to be in that world. But if it happens, it would be very nice. But I would also love to see, oh, let's go play with who could I say? Oh, yeah, let's go play with Bad Omens, or let's go play with Dayseeker, which we have done. I just would love to play with any musicians who enjoy what we do.
Bad Omens and Dayseeker are their own thing because I think they started from like a more mainstream metalcore sound, like
Yeah,
almost kind of
exactly.
started off
But we,
sound. Yeah, started.
yeah,
They sounded more like Bury Tomorrow or Bleed from
yeah, yeah,
Within before going like I put them along the lines with the same trend as maybe Dance Gavin Dance, Spirit
yeah,
Box,
yeah.
that sort of genre. I wanted to talk a little bit more about your songwriting process a little bit more because I think the lyrical aspects behind it are really interesting because I think like Take 1 Minute is very catchy, very like fun and very kind of like I would say very uplifting, if you will. But then, like, you have songs that are, like, I think that you do have, like, with Devotion, a very sort of melancholic sort of opening right there. So there's clearly many different emotions that were felt and expressed through the making of this album. Were they all coming from a personal place, or was there more, like, external sources of inspiration as well?
Yeah, so it's a very personal record. So when we recorded it, I was going through quite a hard time. So I had to find I had to find ways of coping with what I was going through. And being in the studio for 30 days in the heart of winter, it's not the easiest thing to do. So the only kind of catharsis I had was by writing lyrics. So it's the deepest I've gone in terms of my lyrical content. Previously, I was using metaphors and similes to kind of hide how I felt because I couldn't really pronunciate what I wanted to say from the heart. But I found a way to do it with this record, and with we go from the love I have for my partner, and then we go from the distaste I have for the internet and how we need to get out of living our lives through that, and then moving on to songs like Ascending, where understanding that death is inevitable, so you have to live your life in its best way. But how I write lyrics is that many people will have different opinions on what the album is and what it's about. So when I write lyrics, I always want someone who listens to them to have their own take on it so that they can have their own experiences from listening to our music. So I don't want to be like, well, I am telling my life story or how what I'm going through at that time, because I believe, as Rick Rubin said, that every album is a diary entry. So I'm going to be talking about my life at that time. But I want people in 10, 20 years to be able to listen to it and form their own opinion and maybe use our music as a soundtrack to their own life. And that's what I've learned to do. And I think that works best for what we create. And it doesn't really alienate anyone. Like maybe in 5 years I write a heavy ass song that is directly about someone, and when they hear it, they know it's about them. But for now, and how I feel and how I'm existing, I want our music to be available to as many people as possible emotionally, and I think To Live in a Different Way did that, and I think I smashed that, which I'm very proud of.
Did you need to hear the music before you came up with the lyrics, or did maybe the lyrical ideas, such as your disdain for the internet or love being the subject matter, did maybe that help guide the direction of the sound in and of itself?
So how we wrote To Live in a Different Way was Tom would come up with a demo and I'd put vocals over the top. So I think it didn't impact the sound, but it definitely impacted the lyrics. Definitely impacted my how I say pronunciated some words and how I wrote vocal melodies, and how I performed them, because the lyrics. Sometimes I don't write lyrics to music. I write poems or I write certain phrases down that I've heard or I've read, and I write music around that. So especially with Ascending, with I Find Death Liberating, I think I was listening to a podcast or reading a book where they were talking about, you live once, so you got to live your life to the fullest. So I think I did write a few words about that and then molded it into the songs that, or the lyrics that you hear today, and the vocal melodies. And how I actually write my vocal melodies are, I use scat vocals, so I actually don't. Some people can just like sing melodies and sing straight in, and the chorus melodies there and things like that, or people work melodies out on keyboard and stuff like that. But how I do it is I literally just sit in the corner of a room and just sing over the song for 12 hours, and then if I get something good, I get something good, and if I don't, I try again the next day. So
But
yeah,
do,
it's
if you're working on something for a long extended period of time though, do you find it harder to sort of retain or maintain the emotion that initially started? Because like let's say you write a song about something that you're feeling really sad. You're feeling sad at that moment, so there's a lot of fuel being poured into that fire and you're able to do it, but then you bring it to pre-production or you may have to track stuff over, edit some stuff. That emotion isn't going to be the same the next day. So how do you sort of maintain it?
so if I'm feeling that the lyrics aren't genuine, what I'd do is I'd scrap them and then I'd write lyrics about how I'm feeling at that time. So a song called what was it, Mist. So that the lyrics on that song were written in the studio, and I remember that the lyrics meant so much to me that, and it was actually the final track we did on the album where the last lyric I sung, I actually turned around and started crying out of nowhere, because it just happened. Like it was such a quick process of writing the lyrics, and there was a lyric in there that I didn't want to put down, and our producer was like, no, you've got to, because that's the whole reason why I've done this record, is to be real. So I did that. It hurt a lot, and when I sung it, it was hard to sing. So, and what's funny is that with how albums are listened to nowadays, because Mist is one of the boring songs to people who are maybe looking for more bright and fast-paced stuff, especially in the world we live in today. They'll scoop over that. They'll just go over it and try and find the songs that are like the loudest or whatever. But for the people who listen to the album in full and fully take it in, they'll definitely feel the emotion that I felt when I recorded it when they listen to that. So yeah, that's what happened there.
Yeah. Do you seek out inspiration or do you just kind of let it strike you?
So I seek, I definitely seek inspiration. I don't wait for it to come, because if I did that, it would probably take us 10 years to do an album. Sometimes stuff comes out of nowhere, but I believe that you have to work to get those things to come quicker. So for me, I read a lot of books. I listen to a lot of podcasts. Most of the stuff I listen to is all self-help and ways of understanding my brain better. I guess I'm trying to do that so I don't have to pay for a therapist, but I'm doing all I can to kind of understand my brain and how it works. And yeah, I definitely I definitely put myself in positions where the information can come to me instead of waiting for it to turn up. So yeah, I believe that just makes the album writing process more streamlined and easier. Maybe when we get to our fourth album and we can spend a year on an album, I'll just let it come to me, and that will be cool. That'll be a different way of recording, and we may get different results. But for the budget we had at the time, I definitely had to put the time in for things to come to me.
Yeah. I know I'm probably asking this question very prematurely, being that this album is still brand new, but can you see yourself, do you want to maybe further expand on this sound in a way, or do you want to experiment even further? Because I do consider the sound to be relatively experimental. I saw many different usages of your voice. I saw many different forms of instrumentation and arrangements and stuff. So there definitely is like a lot of doors for experimentation that are open, but I could also see this being sort of like a good formula to stick with at the same time if you want to kind of go like the AC/DC route or the death metal route in a way where you kind of want to stick to something you know best. So can you see yourself sticking with this particular style, or do you want to really bring things out of left field?
Yeah, so every album will be different, I think. So we've already recorded two new songs, and they're they're more produced and they're bigger sounding songs, but they still have the core elements of what we've created previously. And I think that I have nothing against bands that do the same thing over and over again, because if they enjoy doing that, fair play to them, and I wish them all the best. But for me, I'm a different person with every piece of art that I create. And it wouldn't be fair to the Love Is Noise audience if I was to just give them the same thing over and over again, because it wouldn't be real to who I am. So, and the most fun I have doing all this is when we're in the studio, and I'm always learning, I'm always finding new techniques, I'm always finding new bands, because I always want to search out to listen to loads of different types of music. So I don't think you're going to get, yeah, you're definitely not going to get To Live a Different Way times two for the next album.
Yeah.
You will get something that's emotion. The things that will stick will be the emotion, the level of detail with the recordings, and the and the performance, and the layers and everything like that. But I think you can, with album two, I think you'll definitely get something that is different. But because it's just gonna be me writing the album. It won't be me and Tom. So it will be different in that regard. But it will still be Lover's Noise, because we have our certain influences, but we always want to push the boat out there, because we don't want to be known as a band that just releases the same record over and over again.
Yeah, of course.
And it's not, again, I have nothing against bands that do that. If you've got a thing and you want to stick to it, like AC/DC, and do your thing, fair play. But to me, I want to always be an innovator as much as I can possibly be, just because my favorite bands like Radiohead and yeah, mainly Radiohead were innovators. So I want to be able to, yeah,
Yeah.
do that.
Well, that's why, like, whenever I'm interviewing an artist and they tell me, like, oh, we're making the music we've always wanted to make, it's like their fifth album. I'm like, you can't. I don't necessarily believe that, because you never know where you're going to be 10 years in 10 years from now when your career is just starting. I mean, like, you look at bands that are, even if you are kind of having that ACDC formula of continuing the same thing over and over again, like, in the end, you're not going to be going into it with the same perspective. You're not going to be writing it with the same motivations or with the same heart or with the same mindset. We're always going to grow whether we intentionally do it or not. So I think in the end, you never know where you're going to be. Who knows? Maybe we will get a sequel to Live in a Different Way on, like, the 10-year anniversary, when you put out another record in 2035 or something like that.
Yeah, you never know, or you might even get a hardcore record, and I just want to do one of those. That's the beauty of what we do and what we've carved. Like, our listeners know, they actually, they don't know what's going to be when they if they listen to it at 12 a.m. on release day, or they listen to it the next day or the next day. They're never going to know what they're going to get when they click play, or when they put the album in on vinyl, or listen to it in their car, which I love. I've always been a fan of. Well, the main thing is, when I was younger, when I used to go to the cinema, and I didn't know what trailers were going to be, because the trailers at the cinema were always only in the cinema. I couldn't get it anywhere else.
Yeah.
I remember those moments, and I think that those moments are fading away, because we're getting into a state of where we have to give everyone everything all at once, and that aura of, like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen now, is fading. So I want to keep that as much as I can, as much as I possibly can, so that people are actually excited about what's going to be released, instead of, because you can be excited about a release with bands or art or whatever that does the same thing, because it gives you a dopamine hit, because you know what's going to happen. So there's no. I want people to be a little bit scared about what they're going to listen to, if they're going to like it or not, because I think that's when you're in the best place musically for our in our space. Because if people listen to it and they go, oh, I don't really know about this, it makes them have to listen to it 5, 6, 7, 8 times to understand it. It'll be great if people understand it straight away, but I think the best art that I've watched, read, listened to has always been stuff that's made me need to go back to it to really understand it. And I'm really pushing back against what the internet in general is trying to make everyone do, which is do what works for the algorithm, do what works for people's short attention spans, and I don't like it all. So I'm doing everything I can to not do that, but somehow be able to make a living from playing music. So we'll
Well,
see if it works.
yeah, I mean that is the big if. I mean, like, I don't believe that there is such a thing as selling out. I don't. I think like if a band makes a lot of money and maybe they even want to quote unquote make something more mainstream to do that, by all means, like sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And you know what? In the end, the bank account could make if you have doubts about doing it, just look at your bank account. And
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
and I don't mean to be like do it for the money or it's all about money. I mean, like, in the end, anybody who tells you that they're not doing it for that money, they're not even thinking about it when they're doing it, they're lying to you.
Yeah.
They're lying.
I want to make enough money from music where that I have the ability to then have no worries, because if the album doesn't do well, I've still got money
Yeah,
to live, you know?
because if
That
your
would be the
album
dream. Like,
if your album doesn't do well, that is almost like getting like into a fucking massive car wreck with like no coverage of plans at all. You're basically just fucked. No
yeah,
pressure at all for the bands watching this, but
yeah.
like
Yeah,
it is like a real thing. You gotta make sure that like this big artistic journey is gonna elevate you and not destroy you, because art does destroy us as much as it elevates us as well.
yeah, exactly. And I do believe that you shouldn't think about the money side of it when you do it. But I think that also you've got to. So there's two ways of doing it. If you've put all the effort in and you've genuinely created something you really enjoy and you're very proud of it, and your heart and soul says you've created something great, then that'll be fine. And then if it's some left field thing that you believe is going to be something that is genuine and you love it, then go put it out and don't worry about if it's going to make money, because it will, because you love it, so that someone in the world will love it, and that's how it works. But when you get to the point where you put no effort in and you're then expecting something from it, that is when the problems start to occur. And I don't put anything out that I don't believe is something that I really enjoy. I'm lucky that the things I create, people seem to love, and I've got some like magical thing around me that makes it so that certain people enjoy what I do. So that gives me confidence to keep on going, and you know, when, because in this world that you there's a lot of doubt that comes in, that creeps in, like, is someone going to like this, because your whole career is based on other people's opinions. So one thing I've learned with To Live in a Different Way is that, okay, we haven't dropped an album that has massive, like, it has huge production, but it's not like the go-to for what consumers would enjoy, you know, the mainstream, as we say, in metal. So what we did was, we were like, okay, we're going to try this, and we're just going to have fun, because we worked with John Markson, who did the New Star of Sapphire record and did Drug Church and Drain and Soul Blind and those type of bands. So we were heavily influenced by that, and we were like, okay, we're going to try this. And you know, it's a slow burn. It's definitely, we're a small band. It's not been a debut album that's gone whoa massive straight away. I didn't want that. I want the steady growth, so that, you know, we're respected in a way where we're not that band that, and big up to any bands that have done this, and I wish them all the best, as I've said, but have gone boom on the debut, and then there's so much stress with that. Like, what about the second album? What about the, you know, I don't want to do that. I just want a steady incline and continue to enjoy my life, but also have the ability to create great art. And with To Live in a Different Way, I think we've really done that, and people have enjoyed it.
You
We may have had
definitely
people
did.
who have, yeah, and I appreciate that, man. And I think we may have had people who, they've not left, but they're expecting us to do something more to what we did previously, which is delve more into the Deftones world. But I can say with the two new songs that we've done, I've done a little bit of an experiment. So the production's a little more mainstream, and it's a little, you know, it's heavier and in more of the mainstream way. I just did it because I enjoyed writing those two songs. So with Love Is Noise, what's cool is that whenever you press play in the shuffle, it's like, it's like a, I don't know. I was in America recently. It's like walking into Vons. You never know what you're gonna get. So it's yeah,
Definitely.
that's what I that's what Love Is Noise is, to be fair, and that's fun to me. So yeah, I love walking into a ginormous American store and there's 5,000 things I don't know what, so I just pick up anything.
Hey, it's great, but very overwhelming at times, might I
Yeah,
say,
yeah,
especially
it
when
was
you,
overwhelming, but everything tastes good, so it's fine.
fair enough. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for again for an amazing, amazing album. Is there just anything else that you would like to promote with Love Is Noise for the release of To Live in a Different Way? What else could we expect in terms of shows, upcoming tours, i.e., maybe someday in the U.S.? What could we be expecting?
Yeah, thanks, Alex, for having me. So, yeah, we are working every single day on trying to get to the US. We are unfortunately too small at this moment in time. So, it's down to everyone listening to this in America and the people who love what we do to push this band. Because unfortunately, to get over to the States, you have to be a certain level. And we're getting there. We're getting there. It takes time, but we're doing everything we can to get there because it is our biggest audience. So we've got that. We're trying. Yeah, we're trying to really to get to America. We are. Yeah, we're going to be dropping 2 songs soon. I don't know when, so look out for them. And yeah, keep enjoying the album. Share it with your friends. Buy it if you can. It's doing quite well over in the old yeah the vinyl purchasing and stuff. So we're very lucky, and all I've got to say is thank you to everyone for pushing this band. Thank you guys again for having me, and just very blessed to be in this position. And again, thank you to everyone who supports what we do.
Hell yeah. Thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Love Is Noise, To Live in a Different Way. Be sure to check that out. We will see you next time on Heavy New York.